Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today is a very exciting video and it is my favorite 24 books of 2024. This was a really difficult ranking to make because I read quite a few good books this year, but I also read quite a few bad books. So my average rating for the year so far is a 3.3 rating. I just think I've been a little bit harder on my ratings, which I shouldn't be. Like, I should just enjoy the book, I know, but I've also taken a lot of recommendations from other people, and a lot of the time that doesn't line up with what I enjoy. Different people suggest different things for their own reasons, and so do I. So this is my take. I'm going to start off with the books that are on the lower 4 side, so maybe like a 3.75 all the way up to like 4.25, and then everything over that is going into 5 stars. So those are going to be my absolute favorite. It is in a particular order, but also not in a particular order, if I could put it that way, because I still love all these books for some reasons and I would 100% recommend them. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So there's definitely a little bit more than 24 books here because I've added in an entire series for some categories or some rankings. So the first 3 books here are the Inheritance Games. So we have the Inheritance Games, we have the Hawthorne, can't never pronounce that, the Hawthorne Legacy, and then the Final Gambit. I loved these books. Well, I loved the first 2 books, and the third book just threw me for a loop. Gave the first one a 4. Are they upside down now? What's going on with me? So the first one I did give a 4.5 star to, the second one a 4 to, and then the last one I gave a 3 star to. Altogether, I would say it is a 4-star series. It is YA, and it's about our main female character, Avery, who inherits a bunch of money from a billionaire, and his family are up in arms because they've never even met, and he's left everything to her. His estate, his money, everything. He's left them a bunch of clues as to why he's done what he's done, but he like extensively researched this. It just takes you through the journey, the mystery of why the money was left for her. It's at the bottom, but it's not a terrible series at all. All of these books are some of my favorites and that I would recommend. So it's just the lesser of what I prefer. The next series I have, again, it is all of these chunked together, and this is the Selection series by Kira Cass. Again, it is YA. It's also dystopian, which I love, and all the books in this series I gave a high 4 to a mid 3. So the lowest book was a 3, which was actually a little novella, and you know, novellas aren't easy to rank quite high if they don't give you enough substance. So that was the lowest book, but everything else was between a 3.5 and a 4. I think I gave the second book, which is The Elites, which I don't have with me, a 3.5, and then everything else has been a 4 for me so far. The first book in the series, which is called The Selection, is in a different ranking completely because that was my first experience with the whole world and the world building, and I absolutely loved it. This follows our main female character, America, in the society where they live in, which is called Ilia. They have factions or castes, and everybody from these castes gets selected or can enter to be selected to basically do like The Bachelor with the prince, and the winner gets to marry the prince. America comes from quite a lower caste. I think she's a 6. It starts at 8 and goes all the way to 1, which is royalty, but if you get married, obviously you move to a 1, and by chance she's thrown into this selection. It just follows her adventures through it. But then the last 2 books, which is The Heir and The Crown, it actually follows their daughter, or the 2 characters that win in the first 3 books follows their daughter, and I really liked it. I thought it was really fun and it was very nostalgic for me, and as a whole I would also give this series a 4-star. I would recommend these above the Inheritance Games. I feel like the Inheritance Games could have been done slightly better. From my experience reading them, I did enjoy it, but I would also really recommend these. I only have this book with me out of this series, but I have read the first book, and the third book I have on my TBR shelf. This is the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is also a YA series. I'd rank this above the Inheritance Games by far. I really love like true crime type of fiction novels. This follows a group of teens who gets recruited by the FBI because they all have special abilities, but not like magical abilities, but just very skilled in profiling, lie detection statistics. So they are recruited into a small little group and they live in a house together and they work on cold cases together, and each book focuses on a different character. I really love this series. I've only read 2 books, but I love this. I love it so much. It's really entertaining. It's really fast paced, and the first book that I read follows Cassie, the second one follows Dean, and it has different plot points as well, which is like a love triangle and all the mysteries that they're doing, all the cold cases, how the cold cases actually to relate to each teen. And I found it very, very fascinating, and a true crime lover would absolutely love these books. I've never met anybody who didn't like these, so definitely would recommend. The next book is Magnolia Park. So I gave this book a 4.5 actually. Since I read it, I don't think about it too much, and when I read the second book, which is Daisy Hates, it kind of brought it down again for me, and I was like, this is just about a toxic circle, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's very toxic. So Magnolia Parks and BJ are actually exes, but they're still in love with each other. They're in the same circle of friends. They're both socialites. He's a model, and they broke up originally because he cheated on her, so she's always trying to get back at him and he's trying to get back at her, and it's kind of romanticizing a toxic relationship. It is only the first book. This did keep me entertained. I read it, I want to say in February or January, February this year, and I was literally on a lilo in the pool just consuming it, but it was entertaining in the sense that there's so much drama, and who doesn't like drama? It's like The Real Housewives. Why else do you watch that show other than for the drama? So I did enjoy it enough, but it didn't rank in the top, but I really loved this book compared to Daisy Hate. It's just very toxic. The next 3 books I don't actually have physically with me. They're in the UK at my partner's place. Birthday Girl by Penelope Cruz. I know a lot of people give her so much flack because of what she writes about, the content. Don't read it then. If you know that her books are just not for you, don't pick it up. Don't comment, because I like them. Every single book I've read from her so far have been really good, except the Devil's Night series. I didn't love that. I just felt like it was too drawn out and too long. Birthday Girl was good, and it's like, the trope is weird, and it's like boyfriend's dad. So Jordan has a boyfriend who's an asshole. He doesn't pay rent. He doesn't appreciate her very much. So they end up getting kicked out of their apartment and staying with his dad because they can't really afford it. His dad's like, it's fine, you don't have to pay me anything, just like take this time to save. She doesn't come from a background like that, so she is willing to do chores, she's willing to cook, she's willing to do gardening, like she just wants to help out so that she doesn't feel like she's freeloading. But his son is a total twat and does what he wants to. He'll have parties, and then he ends up cheating on Jordan, and she's going through her own thing and wants to move out. So his father, Pike, convinces her to stay, and the two of them have a budding romance. But I thought it was really entertaining, and it was believable in the sense that if they made a movie out of that, I would 100% eat it up. So I thought it was a really good concept, and I really, really enjoyed it. I actually read it over a couple of weeks when I was working and I was on a boss trip. So every opportunity I had to sit down and read, I was just flipping through those pages, and I thought it was really, really entertaining. Then another one I don't have, like I said, is The Worst Best Man. A lot of people don't like that. It's by Lucy Scorp. I thought it was great, but I like smutty books, so there is a lot of smut in it, and it follows our main female character, Francesca, who is obviously the maid of honor to her friend's wedding. The best man and her are just enemies, and I think it's just because they're so opposite. She's very down to earth. She owns her own restaurant, and she's worked her way up to where she is, where he comes from money, so he just exudes this this superiority that he's better than everybody else. The two of them are obviously thrown together because she's the maid of honor and he's the best man. If something happens while they're away on the stag do / rehearsal dinner, their groom goes missing. So the two of them come together and try to solve this little mystery. But it was really fun. It's very, very smutty, but it was really, really fun. And at the end, it was so heartfelt. I absolutely ate it up. I don't have the copy with me because I actually gave it to my friend to read, and then I ended up not going back to that job, so I probably will never see that book again, but I ate it up. I loved every second of it. Next we have 5 Survive. This is my second highest book of Holly Jackson because I really love the fast-pacedness of this book. It went quickly. It follows a group of teens going on spring break, and it follows them through 8 hours, and it breaks down the hours, and every chapter is an hour counting down to the end of it. I thought it was amazing. The whole story just follows, I think the female character character. Her name is Red, and it follows her, and she witnessed a crime. She was meant to be in witness protection, but something happened. Someone revealed a secret, and they found out that she was going to testify against this crime mob or something like that, and it just, oh my gosh, it implodes, and someone tries to set them up and tries to get her to admit what she saw, and it was crazy. It was very convoluted, but I absolutely loved it. It was so fast-paced, and I love books like that where something is happening in every single chapter. There's not really a lull. That's my type of mystery thriller like that. Even though it was YA, I thought it was a great book, and it was probably my second favorite from Holly Jackson for sure. So these three are basically 17, 16, and 15 in my ranking, because Powerless I actually reread this year. So I first read it in December last year. Was it December? I'm not sure when it came out, but I think it was December last year I first read this book. Didn't love it, gave it I was stuck between a 2.75 and a 3-star. Then I reread it and annotated it a bit just before the second book came out, and I really liked it after that because I kind of knew the plot and the characters, and I noticed a bit of foreshadowing and stuff like that. So I did enjoy it much more, but it was still a 4-star. The second two books are Powerful and Reckless. Powerful is just a novella. It's like 100 and something pages, and I gave it a 4-star. And then Reckless, everybody hated the book, and I freaking loved it. It's what I needed after so much drama happening in this. I just wanted a little bit of silliness, a little bit of banter, and a little bit of adventure. So I absolutely ate it up. Obviously, in order to read these, you would have to start with the first book. So I just threw it in here, and it was a 4-star. So it sits right in the middle of all of this. So I would recommend this series. If you don't know what it's about, it's kind of like a bunch of books thrown together. So it's like kind of the Selection series a little bit. It's kind of the Hunger Games a little bit. There was another book I read recently as well where I noticed that she'd taken bits from there. It's just a compilation of all our favorite nostalgic books from when we were younger and thrown together in a new story. So we follow Payton and Kai, and Payton lives in a dystopian society where people have magical powers, and if you don't have a power, you're called ordinary, and they're looking to exterminate everybody who's ordinary. Payton is unfortunately ordinary, but she's posing as a psychic, and no one can disprove it. But then she crosses paths with the prince, and his name is Kai, and he's the enforcer of the kingdom. So as an enforcer, he has to enforce the laws, and he has to exterminate the ordinary. So he sends them into like the desert, and they die or whatever. If you harbor a ordinary, you die. So that's what he does, and the two of them, enemies to lovers, but they end up like really falling for each other, even though he doesn't really know that she's an ordinary yet, and it just follows their adventure. The novella follows her best friend, which shows up in the first book, and then the last book is just, like I said, it's such a good adventure, and I absolutely ate it up. The next book was another dystopian. You'll notice that a lot of dystopians take the lead over here because I think it's like my preferred genre other than fantasy, because it's just so nostalgic of all the movies I used to watch as a child or as an early teen. I absolutely love it. I eat it up every single time. Doesn't matter if it's YA or adults. Like I mostly read YA because I haven't found like any great adult dystopians. If you do know of any, please let me know. But this is Followers. I haven't shut up talking about this since I read it, and this was amazing because it was dystopian. It still had like a mystery element to it, and I couldn't recommend it more. It's kind of just a look at what social media can do to us in the future, because people are so dependent on it that they kind of forget that there is an outside world out there. So this follows our female character in 2051, and her name is Marlo, but it also follows Marlo's mum and her best friend back in 2015, I want to say 2015 or 16, and there's this huge ordeal that happens which is called the spill, and it was AI basically stealing people's information onto a server and then spreading all this information. So whether you had cheated on your spouse and there was a message, or stolen money and there was some paper trail of that, it was all released and people ended themselves. And so due to this, now like people don't have cell phones or screens anymore, and they use devices that are like implanted into their skins. The older folk are getting like Alzheimer's, and they call it like the fog, where they're actually forgetting who they are their whole lives because they had too much screen time and blue light. And Marlowe, there's a secret about where she was born and who she was born to. She doesn't think her parents are actually her parents because they do not have intercourse in order to have children anymore. They actually make them in a lab and then implant them, and you can pick like your child's characteristics. So when she goes to start, you know, sifting through what the characteristics her and her husband want to have with this child, there's something that's revealed, and she finds out that her parents are not really her parents. It was very, 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 very good, very entertaining, and it leaves you with a lot of questions as to like what could happen if people just forget where they actually came from and social media has overtaken everything. It's my favorite Holly Jackson book. I didn't add the whole series in here, but out of the whole series, out of all of the books I've read from her, this is my favorite. Good Girl, Bad Blood. This is the second book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I watched the series this year because it came out this year, but I read the book last year, and maybe it's because I read it over the span of maybe 3 or 4 weeks that I didn't really grasp it and I didn't really love it. I just thought it was a little bit too juvenile. Everybody loves it, and I was like, what is wrong with me? Why don't I like it? After I watched the series, absolutely loved it. Was like, oh my gosh, they actually made the series a lot more interesting than the book was. So I decided to pick up the second book. Absolutely loved it. Pip's character development, her regression, everything about this book was amazing. And she's such a strong, independent girl, even though she's still in her teens. I loved the way she was written in this book. I loved the book. It was so fast paced, always something going on, and I gave it 4.5 stars. And that is the highest rated book I've ever given Ellie of Holly Jackson's book. So really love this. I can't tell you too much because obviously it is a sequel, but it does involve another case which is kind of linked to the first case. Oh my gosh, I loved it. I loved it. The found family and her development, like I said, and her and Ravi's relationship development, absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And she's such a passionate girl. Like, she felt like a real person, and that is when you know when a book was really good. The next book I didn't read physically either. This was on my Kindle, and it is called Riley Thorne and the Dead Guy Next Door by Lucy Score as well. And this is like a mystery paranormal romance. So our main female character, Riley, she is a psychic, and she comes from a long line of psychics, but she doesn't want anything to do with it. She really she thinks it's all hogwash, although she's seen ghosts her entire life. She has like these weird out-of-body experiences, and she's never really known. And when the guy in her apartment building right next door to her ends up dead, she needs to know what's going on, and every time she like touches a certain object that he had touched, she'd get like a flashback, and it was just so funny. Somehow a private investigator gets involved as well, and the two of them end up working together with her psychic abilities, and he was like an ex-police officer, and they set on course to like find out what's going on, but she ends up falling for him and is not sure if he likes her back. But it was so entertaining. I'm currently reading the second book right now, but it was really, really entertaining. It was so witty, so funny, the banter, I just loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I would definitely recommend it, and it's on Kindle Unlimited, so why not try it out? So this book I recently read, and you'll probably see this video before you see that vlog. I read this. I thought I was in a book slump. I read 2 other books prior to this, and I just couldn't get into it. One book was like 390 pages, and it took me 9 days to read, and I was like, I'm definitely in a slump. Then I read a book that I was highly anticipating, didn't love it, and then I picked up this one in the same video, and I couldn't put it down. It was so fast paced, and everything I love in a thriller. It is an adult thriller by C.L. Taylor, and it's called The Guilty Couple. It was so entertaining. It reminded me of a movie that I watched back in the day called Double Jeopardy. That just got me because it was so nostalgic. So our main female character, Olivia, has been framed for trying or attempting to murder her husband. She doesn't know why he's done it, so when she's released early, she sets out to find out what happened and why it happened, because she didn't do anything wrong. But also her husband has fed her daughter so many lies, so her first aim is obviously to get reconnected with her daughter and then take him down. Even if it takes her own life, she's taking him down. It was just so fast paced. Something was always happening, and I do this sometimes. I ended up skimming some of it because I just wanted to know, and I was like, oh my god, what is gonna happen? What is gonna happen? She's gonna get caught. And so good, so good. The plot twist got me. I really didn't expect it at all, and that takes a lot. I read a lot of thrillers, so just the fact that I didn't know what was going on, it got me, and I really enjoyed this book so much, and I would recommend it. So the next book I have on here is it's a bit of a controversial one, because when I read this during spooky season, I expected a spooky book, but it was more like a psychological thriller with a stalker element, and I didn't love the stalker side of things because it evoked something in me, but I feel like this is a really important book to read. It follows Clarissa, our main female character, who's being stalked by one of her colleagues, and it goes through all the processes of it, from like being scared and letting him do things because she's too scared to say no and too afraid, and how the police just overlook stalking and don't always think that it's relevant to report, or you need so much evidence. And it hit something in me, and it's by Claire Kendall, but it hit something in me and I haven't stopped thinking about it. And some of the ideas that they give you in that book, I take it with me in my everyday life, like going out by myself as a woman and people trying to be too friendly, and you just kind of need to stand your ground. And I think it was a very important book to read because we've all had experiences with men not taking no for an answer. It's very impactful book, and I definitely would recommend, but do check trigger warnings. Sorry if I've changed position a little bit, my battery died, so I had to quickly change that out. But next, Unravel Me by Tahira Mafi. If I haven't spoken about the Shatter Me series enough, I don't know where you've been for the last year, because this is the epitome of dystopian that I absolutely love. Even though it's YA, it still had all the elements that I absolutely love. This is the second book. I've read one of the novellas as well, because there are like 5 novellas and I think 7 books or something. It's a very extensive series, but I absolutely loved it. This one came down a little bit because it wasn't, I don't know, it was a bit repetitive, put it that way, but I still did love it. I gave this one a 4.5 star, which is why it's so high up. This is actually at number 9 for us, so we're already in my top 10. I'll tell you a little bit more about the series when we get to the first book, but absolutely love this, would recommend. Please go get this series. Next, we have the first book in the selection series. This one I actually gave a 5 star to. I take it back a little bit. I think it was more like a 4.5 star, because after reading the rest of the series and reading so many other books now, it kind of was lacking a little bit in my opinion, and I didn't fully get that 5 star feeling. I was giddy, I loved the swooning, and everything about it was great, but if I compare it to what my 5 stars are now, I'd probably give this a 4.5, and that is why it's a little bit lower down for me. But like I said, it is a great dystopian novel, and it has a Regency element to it. It's really entertaining, and especially for like teenage girls, I would definitely recommend these books. The Ballad of Never After, and this is the ballad of the most disappointing series, because the first one, which I read last year, was a 5 star. This one was lowered to a 4.5, and I feel like second books should be a bit better, but I mean, it doesn't happen all that often. But this one was a little bit more disappointing. I just feel like the story wasn't fully fleshed out, and I didn't like the cliffhanger it left. And then the third book in the series just like completely disappointed me and was a 3 stars. I'm really disappointed in this, but I still did love it enough. I read this in a failed 24-hour readathon, so I read this entire book in like 11 hours. The font is tiny though, but I do like the story of Evangeline and Jax. I love Jax as a character. He's morally grey, and he just gave me all the vibes, and he's like kind of evil but not evil, and I love the fairy tale aspect of it. I do love Stephanie Garber's writing. It's very whimsical, very magical, and it feels like a Disney movie being narrated to you. So I did love it, but I didn't love it as much as I loved the first book, and the third book I wouldn't even bother with it, but I would recommend the series. Like I said, if you do like Disney stuff, if you are a Disney adult like me, you will absolutely eat this up. But it's still good, and it's up there with my favorites, and I do think about this series quite a bit. Then something I recently read, and again can't shut up about, is this book, Upside Down. It's called 9 by Zach Hines, and this made it to my top 6, and I just recently read it. It's by an unknown author that I've never even heard about it. It was on the sales rack for like $60, and I absolutely loved this. Absolutely loved it. Again, dystopian. The little theme going here. It follows our main character Jason, who lives in a dystopian world, and in this world people have 9 lives, and every time you extinguish a life, you come back with an upgrade. So you'll have better hair, better teeth, or your physical appearance is upgraded, as well as your financial status, because every time you burn through a certain amount of lives, you get rebates from the government. But there's something funny going on, like there's environmental changes, and people are either dying and being extinguished, or they have like weird traits after they've burnt their lives. So there's like people who can't taste and they're only on life 3, or people that can't see certain colors and they're only on life 2. So things are happening, and the government is somehow trying to push younger people to burn their lives, and they give like the school the rebates if they burn a certain amount of students a year. So there's something funny going on, and he's determined to figure it out because his mom worked for the government in their labs, and she suddenly just burned through all their lives and went mental, and no one knows why. It was so good. It was such a great concept. Zach Hines is a screenwriter, so it was written like a movie. I actually saw everything playing out in my life, in my mind, and honestly, it was great. It had the perfect amount of scenery, the perfect amount of explanations. It just had the perfect amount of everything. It was just a little bit too YA for me, but I would still recommend this book. It was amazing. So now we're in my top 5 books. And I'm sure no one's going to be shocked at the top 3. The top 3 is just like the epitome for me. So starting off at number 5, Cinder. I love this book. Again, it's dystopian /sci-fi /fantasy. Absolutely love this book. It follows Cinder, who is a cyborg, and in their society they have cyborgs, and they have droids, and they have robot living among humans. But then there's also like UFOs or aliens that they call Lunars that live on the moon, and they're like kind of rivals because Lunars can do like mind control, and they kind of just use Earthlings as like their puppets. Cinder, there's a secret about what happened to her and why she ended up as a cyborg. She doesn't know. She just woke up one day and she was a cyborg, and she doesn't remember her previous life. She was adopted by a family where adoptive father passed away, and she's currently living with her stepmother and 2 stepsisters. The one sister's nice, the other sister's horrible, but there's also a plague, and she needs to figure out how to save everybody. It's such an adventure. It is so good, and it sucks that I didn't start this earlier, because this is the oldest book on my TBR. It's one of the first physical books I bought. So yeah, really love this. Would recommend. Again, if you are a Disney adult, you will like the concept of this, because Cinder is Cinderella. Next one is Scarlet, which is Little Red Riding Hood. So they all interconnect, and they all loosely follow a Disney retelling. So would recommend these. Absolutely love that. I don't know what if I just said made sense. Again, the next book I do not have with me, but it's Shatter Me. I absolutely love this book. When I first read it, to this day I still think about how Juliet changed me. But really love this series. This was read originally like the end of December last year, which I still classed as my books for this year, because I didn't want to wait for my roundup until the very end of the year, just because I had a lot going on being in the UK and being with my partner's family, and there's always so many things going on, and his birthday is also on the 1st of January, so there was a lot going on. So I did my roundup a little bit earlier. I still classed it as a book for this year. So it was my first like dystopian read since I was younger, and I think all that nostalgia and everything, and I still feel the same about the books. Shatter Me, like I said, is a dystopian world, and they have this regime called the Reestablishment, who has now taken a hold of America. They are brutes. They are absolute brutes. Some people have abilities, and if you do have abilities, they terminate you. So Juliet, she has a deadly touch. If she touches someone, they die. She accidentally touched someone when she was much younger, and obviously they died, and she was institutionalized. So she was in this institution for I think 2 years. She's been watched and monitored because the Reestablishment actually want to use her as a weapon. They bring her out of hiding and they want to train her up, but she ends up escaping, and it just has a whole bunch of knock-on effects, and so good. So good. There's a little bit of a love triangle in the book, but it happens a little bit later on, but there's little sprinklings of it throughout the book. The love interest, I loved him, absolutely loved him in the first book. Just the journey you go on with them and the learning about their powers, that for me is so interesting. So would 100% recommend again. So top 3 now, and I've spoken about these enough. I can't stop talking about it. I was very late to the party. Very late to the party, but it still rings true. ACOTAR. So these are the first 3 books I've read in the series. Each and every single one of them is a 5-star and above. So I gave ACOTAR 5-star, 6-star, 6-star. What more can I say? This is an amazing fantasy series. I know people have ugly things to say about it, but I do not care. I absolutely loved it. I'm engulfed by it every time I pick up a book. I just submerge myself in the words, and her writing is great. I don't care if there's plot holes. I just want to know what's happening in this society, because who wouldn't want to be a fairy, honestly, or live in this society? I absolutely ate it up, and I love it so, so, so much. It's a fantasy world with fays, shapeshifters, and everybody has a different type of power, and they're in this place called Perinthian, which is bordering the human realm, and they have an evil king that wants to overthrow the humans, and it's just such a great adventure, and I really wish they would make a movie out of it. I heard that they tried to make a series, but something happened and it didn't end up happening. I would kill to watch this series, absolutely kill. And these books just evoked such big emotions in me that I didn't think I could have in a book. But it's kind of like how we feel about Harry Potter. That's how I feel about this. Not J.K. Rowling, the actual story. I don't care if Sarah J. Maas is this or that. I loved these books, and I know a lot of people don't want to read them because they are constantly recommended, but it's worth it, in my opinion. And after this, I'm going to start the Throne of Glass series, but I know I'm late. I know I'm late. I only started my reading journey like a year ago. I've always read, but seriously taken it serious now. I have some catching up to do. But yeah, so good, these books. I can't recommend them enough if you do like fantasy. So those are my top pick for 2024. 24 books for 2024. So these ones I can't recommend anymore. Every single one of these lists I would recommend. Some of them obviously are not as good as others, but they're still really, really good. That is it, guys. That is all the information I have for you guys today. This is going to be a long video. This clip already is 19 minutes, but anyway, I am super glad that I got into this year. I enjoyed every single minute reading the good and the bad books, because it just helps me discern what kind of reader I am, because I thought I was like only into thrillers, then I was only into like non-fiction, and then all of this happened to me. So I'm really, really happy with where we are in our reading journey. I am so excited that I exceeded my goal. I had a goal of 70 books this year and I got to 95, so very excited about that. And it's been a great year reading and documenting all of it. Thank you so much for watching me. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Please let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of it and your rating. That would be amazing. I'd love to start a conversation about that. But until then, I'll see you all next week. Bye guys.